Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. JACALYN KERBECK. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio, your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Hello and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, home of the YouTube Silver Subscriber Award for crossing over 100,000 subscribers. I'm Dr. JACALYN KERBECK, also known as the Listening Mentor, coming to you live from London with a very special episode of The Power of Etiquette and Manners. Joining me today is the star of our show, and guess what? He's not coming in virtually. He's actually here with me. And in addition, we have an incredible group of wonderful people who've been here for the London experience and who've just graduated pending their quiz results. Setting Boundaries and Asking Permission course. We also have a very special guest who's going to tell us all about tea, everything we need to know about tea. Let's first of all welcome Mr. Philip Sykes, who is the president and founder of the British School of Excellence. Please come and join me, Philip.
Hello, Dr.
Hello.
JACALYN. Hello, beautiful audience out there. What do we say on Friday?
It's Friday.
The big Friday. And it is with such just delight and joy that we as an organization have really moved in leaps and bounds. I cannot believe that we are now heading toward, I was talking to one of our wonderful cohort this week, and he and I were just saying now almost summer solstice is on the way here and we're going to be heading toward Christmas. So July is knocking on our doorstep. And this episode, as Dr. JACALYN said, we are really celebrating extraordinary people throughout the world, but predominantly through people who've walked through the door here at the British School of Excellence. And I am absolutely thrilled to have the opportunity and the privilege to connect, to engage, and to guide and steer, but not only guide and steer, but to learn so much from other people. And it really is a privilege to have you here in London. It truly is. And I am hugely excited as what's to unfold. There are going to be some incredible dynamic opportunities heading in the direction of USA Global TV and the British School of Excellence. And again, I know this wouldn't be possible without dynamic people behind the scenes. Your team, the team that stands and sits, makes this organization run as best as it possibly can. So a big thank you and a shout out. There's someone over there in the room sitting here. She doesn't want to come on TV today. But yeah, it really is a true joy. And I'm going to hand back to you because let you take it away and make some introductions to some incredible people.
Thank you. And just as a quick announcement, the British School of Excellence and USA Global TV and Radio are coming together for a very exciting luxury spa event. And it's in Ponte Vedra, Florida. And it's November 15th through the 21st. So we're looking for any of you who are looking to up your game, whether it comes to empathy, compassion, respect, being a good human, being a good person, working on personal, also being interested in getting a little bit of pampering and some luxury. So stay tuned. We'll have more information on that. Thank you, Philip. Appreciate it.
One thing we will do, but we don't pontificate about, is how to eat your peas.
Okay, that's good to know. Right now, what we're going to do is we're going to ask some of our outstanding and stellar cohorts who are here in the room today to come forward and introduce themselves. They're going to share their name, where they're from, and the value that they can bring to our global community. So let's give them a round of applause.
Hello everyone, my name is Uwe from Germany and I'm here for the London Experience Week because I'm all into personal and business growth. And I'm owner of the Resilience Operations Center. So if you are interested in becoming more resilient as an organization, as a company, I'm here to help.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dr. ONIKA Nicole Hura, and I'm so blessed to be part of the British School of Excellence. You can see I'm having a heart. It has been an Ascot week, thanks to BSE. We've enjoyed ourselves so much, and I'm so blessed to be here. Come join us and do the Heart Day.
Hello, my name is Maria Campos. I'm from Portugal. I have 30 years of experience in hospitality as a flight attendant, and I'm also an etiquette coach certified by the British School of Excellence. And the London experience is absolutely something that you can't miss. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Christine Buss, and I am delighted to be here with the British School of Excellence. This week has been an incredible experience and very meaningful. We have done everything from go behind the scenes at a perfume shop to learn how it's made, to going to the famous Ascot. And it's been just the kind of experience that you really can't get from being a tourist or from reading about it or even from social media. So I just want to say how delighted it was for anyone who has an interest in it to contact the British School of Excellence.
Hello, my name is William Buss, and I'm from the United States. I am currently a junior, and I came onto a London experience trip to learn more and to enjoy many fun experiences. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Amanda Holmstrom. I've had the pleasure of being here for the last 2 weeks for the Train the Trainer and the London Experience hosted by the. I have taken away a lot of lessons that I hope to bring to Canada to help people learn how to believe in themselves and reach their personal excellence.
Hello, I am Lisa Burdett from Dallas, Texas. I am the president of the Dallas School of Etiquette. I specialize in business etiquette, family etiquette, and interview skills. I cannot tell you how much I've learned and will take away from the British School of Etiquette. This is my 3rd visit, and I plan to come to everything that Philip has in the future. This program has enabled me to reach out globally and make connections, and to lead others on how to make connections, not just in our home country, but around the world. Because as we know, our world is shrinking and manners are a must. And here at the British School of Excellence, it is emphasized it's how we make people feel that is important. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And now joining us is Dr. Madeline Chan, who is a television host exceptionnaire. She's on the Film and Music Show and also Talking Heads, and she's a singer and a songwriter and a soul heart awakener. Dr. Chan.
Thank you, Dr. JACALYN. Hi, everyone. Welcome, USA Global TV and radio viewers on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and of course, LinkedIn. So my name is Dr. Madeline Chan. I've been with the family of USA Global TV and Radio since about 3 years now. I had no idea about how to present or how to listen or how to become a better person in certain situations. And with the tuition of Dr. JACALYN KERBECK, taking her courses, believing in myself, her being a mentor for me, I can proudly say that I now present the Film and Music Show. And I also had the opportunity to become a presenter on Talking Heads, where I'm able to convey my experience and knowledge. And for today, I was kindly being invited by Dr. JACALYN and the wonderful Philip Sykes from the British School of Excellence, giving me the opportunity and grace to be with a whole beautiful group of people, part of the power of elevated listening, learning truly engagement, learning how so that there's no judgment, to bring more peace and understanding and giving grace so that each and every one of us can create a better place, grace and space and peace in this world. And I thank you so much. And I urge anyone out there to please come on board the USA Global TV and Radio, because we stand for hope, education, brand awareness. We outline that. And also, most importantly, you are able to share your story without judgment. Thank you. My name is Dr. Madeline Chan, and I'll see you on the Film and Music Show next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Chan. Thank you, everyone. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to come back, and we are actually going to meet with the expert, Liam Rose. But for now, let's hear from Bay London.
In a world that moves fast, there's strength in the woman who moves with grace. Introducing Bay London, where confidence meets craftsmanship. Each piece is intentionally designed for the woman who knows her worth, crafted from luxurious Italian eco-fabrics that feel as good as they look. With elegant coverage, effortless support, and timeless style, our swimwear celebrates both your body and your essence. Founded by fashion expert Carrie Sykes, Bay London is made for women who want to feel sexy, stylish, and seen. From poolside to beachside, sunrise to sunset, Bay London outfits you for every moment that matters. Because beauty isn't about age, it's how you wear your confidence. Bay London, confidence, elegance, effortless luxury. Visit baylondon.com. Act now for your exclusive friends and family discount of $35. Scan the QR code. Bay London, where confidence meets craftsmanship. Proud sponsor of USA Global TV and Radio.
Hello and welcome back to USA Global TV and Radio, a special episode of The Power of Etiquette and Manners. We're returning to you here live from London, and now we're going to turn the show over to our special guest, Mr. Liam Rose, who's an expert when it comes to all things tea. Mr. Philip Sykes is going to do a quick introduction, and then we're going to go over to him.
Well, many years ago, we had a cohort walk through the door. It was an experience we put together. They went along to Twinings, and there was a magic man in the room. This magic man, the passion, the energy. He is a tea extraordinaire, but we haven't even tapped into half of his passion and energy when it comes to engaging with tea and that sort of thing. But he's a true ambassador for the organization he works for as well. I still believe that we will do something together, like travel the world and do a tea program and visit all weird and wonderful places, and it'll be on Netflix at some stage. If anyone wants to sponsor us to do that, we can coach, guide, steer, and ensconce you into the heart of amazing tea and a journey with tea. So without further ado, here is Liam, who really is a true nutter professional and a passionista and a tea expert of highest of high notes. Over to you, Liam.
Hey there. Yes, thank you very much for that very kind introduction. It's an absolute flattery. Yeah, I am definitely what I would call an aficionado, a lover of tea, and yes, I'm one of the senior brand ambassadors who works at the Twinings Strand store, the 318-year-old premises down on the London Strand Street. If you're in London, please come along, join us in on one of our master classes. We'd be delighted to have you. There is so much to learn about the world and the history of tea. If anyone has any questions about anything I say as we go through, please feel free to shout them out to me. Otherwise, I am just going to keep waffling on, starting with the history and moving into the 6 categories of tea itself. To go back to the beginning of tea's story then is quite a long way. We go back to 2737 BC, almost 5,000 years ago. This is supposedly when the then Emperor Shennong, otherwise known as the Emperor of the 5 Grains or the Divine Husbandman, discovered tea supposedly by accident. The story goes that he was traveling through what is today known as Yunnan, the southwest of China. And while he's stopped under the heat of the midday sun, he begins boiling up a large cauldron of water to make it clean and sterile and safe for consumption. While he's waiting, the wind begins to pick up, and as it does so, it tugs free a number of the leaves on the tree above his head, and they drift down into the cauldron of nearly boiling water. These, of course, just so happen to be tea leaves, and they make the world's first and quite possibly largest cup of tea. In some versions of that story, the leaves drift right down into the cup of hot water as he raises it to his lips to take a drink, which is a bit more fanciful, but it's got more of an air of romance and narrative to it, so that's my preferred version of the story. Regardless, Shen Nung sips the drink and exclaims that it is healthful and good and has many medicinal properties. After Shen Nung, each of the different dynasties of China has a developing relationship with tea, building on what came before until we reach kind of contemporary Chinese tea culture as we would recognize it today. The Han dynasty primarily used their teas as strong green medicinal tea that were pressed into bricks or blocks, small quantities of which would then be chipped off and crushed into a fine powder, not dissimilar to how we treat matcha from Japan today. The idea of powdering tea, of frothing it with a whisk, isn't something that came initially from Japan, but rather from China many, many years before. After the Han, we move into the Tang dynasty, and the Tang are the first to start exporting China's tea. They start shipping it not overseas, but over land. 8-month journeys across the mountains of the Himalayas, carrying tea on muleback or even literally on the backs of the travelers themselves as they transported the tea from China to places like Mongolia, Nepal, and Tibet as well. Fortunately, the Tibetans quite enjoyed the tea that reached them because it was nothing like the green tea that initially left China. These teas would be strong, fermented, aged forms of dark tea. What happens to a green tea after you subject it to 8 months of different hot, cold, wet, dry, humid, frosty, arid weather conditions and travel it across the Himalayan altitudes, rising and falling across those mountain paths? The Tibetans call it port cha, and it's traditionally brewed today for about half a day and then churned with yak's butter and salt. So it's a bit more like a thin soup than a cup of tea that we might sit and enjoy. After the Tang, we move into the Song, and the Song is a period where there is a lot of emphasis put on culture and social status, and tea plays an instrumental part in this. The first stylings of Gong Fu or Kung Fu tea start to pop up around this time period, as do some of the first and most famous tea houses of China. This is where tea begins to gain its own true sense of real etiquette, a way to perform a ritual using the tea that signifies social class, status, and manner, as opposed to the more traditional forms of green teas and oolongs that were still primarily drunk by the working or peasant classes. After the Song, the Yuan dynasty comes to power. This Mongol dynasty has very little interest in the way that the Song dynasty has been drinking their refined white, yellow, or green teas. They actually bring back the dark fermented tea that had been exported a few centuries prior. Ultimately, we do pass over into the Ming dynasty. And the Ming are mostly famous these days for their beautiful blue and white porcelain, which will occasionally pop up even today. But for tea's purposes, they put a lot of emphasis on black tea. And this was very important because black tea traveled so much better. And China is now starting to trade with the Western world. In 1606, we have the first recorded shipment of tea being brought back from China, not to England, interestingly enough, but to the Netherlands. The Dutch trading companies were the first to start bringing tea from the east to the west. However, England is significantly later to the tea party, so to speak. Most of Western Europe starts drinking its first cups of tea between 1606 to around 1610. England won't really start drinking tea until the mid to late 1630s, and we don't start selling and advertising tea in earnest until the very end of the 1650s, almost half a century later than many of the other major Western powers of the modern age, which often comes as a bit of a shock to some of the people that we take through our masterclasses. The idea that England was one of the very last nations to get their hands on tea, given how synonymous we are these days with the love and drinking of it. England does get its tea though, and the first to start selling it, or at least the first to start advertising it, was a chap named Thomas Garraway. He starts advertising in 1657 what he calls the new China drink out of his then coffee house. Coffee houses were incredibly popular all across London. They were hotbeds for intellectual discussion, philosophical discussion, and mercantile negotiation. They were places where people would meet to talk about trade contracts, work out sales costs, prices, and naturally they were very kind of bawdy, very energetic spaces. Everyone's drinking alcohol, everyone's drinking coffee, so they're all either very drunk or hopped up on caffeine or some combination of the two. Not really the kind of atmosphere we imagine when we think of sitting down with a fine China cup of tea these days, but it was through those coffee houses that tea started its journey across English culture. Initially as a curiosity, but gaining popularity, especially with the arrival of a lady called Catherine of Braganza in 1662. A Portuguese princess, she comes over to London to marry King Charles II. Portugal's had tea for the last half a century or so. It's a firm favourite of the aristocracy over there. So much so that when Catherine comes to England, she brings with her not only tea in her dowry, courtesy of her father, but also her personal love of tea. The story goes that when she arrived in Portsmouth, the very south of England, she asked for a cup of tea to be brought to her to settle her nerves after the stress of the long sea voyage from Portugal to England. The good people of Portsmouth, it is said, presented her with a flagon of ale. This didn't quite make the right impression. She announced that she would rather go back to Portugal, but nevertheless, she elected to stay. The Queen of England, now drinking tea, suddenly makes the whole affair very popular, very fashionable for the high society ladies of London. And before long, it's very much the done thing for ladies to enjoy a cup of tea with their conversation and sewing in the sitting room after the evening meals and parties were concluded, while the gentlemen traced up to the study for cigars and whiskey instead. That's not to say that tea was accessible to everyone, at least initially. Tea had become incredibly expensive, took a long time to get to England, and it had to be shipped over at great expense. Add to this that it was primarily the wealthy who were interested in affording this curiosity from far-flung places, and massive taxes had been levied against the import of tea to the tune of nearly 119%. These incredibly high import taxes would lock tea into the upper classes for nearly the next 200 years. This meant that something like gunpowder green tea, which depending on where you go to find it, will cost you around £17.50 to every 175 grams or so. That would have cost you somewhere in the region of £500 to £700 in today's money for the same kind of quantity. It was extortionately expensive. As a result, the black market for tea absolutely exploded. It actually came in two fairly surprising forms. England, as an island nation, is fairly famous for its smugglers, and a lot of tea was smuggled into England, make no mistake. We're not talking a couple of guys rowing a little dinghy across from France, but rather massive organisations that would send entire ships up the channel towards the Netherlands to bring back hundreds of tons of tea at a time. The second aspect of the black market for tea in the 1700s was actually forgery, the making of your own fake, heavy air quotes, teas in order to appease kind of public need for consumption. This could have been as simple as simply taking leaves from other plants and bulking out existing tea stock with these other leaves, things like blackthorn or slough leaves, for example. It actually caused deforestation in the UK due to the amount of trees and leaves that are being stripped out of English woodlands during this time period. But more sinisterly, it could involve creating entirely fake tea, a substance that became known as smooch. Lovely word, horrifying substance. The problem with trying to make your own fake tea is that no matter how you treat the leaves, the British at the time didn't know what the tea plant looked like. They didn't know how to process it. And so when they were trying to make their own fake teas, they had to get a bit creative because those pesky leaves just would not stay green, no matter how you treated them. So what to do. Apply toxic metallic dyes to the leaves, things like copper sulfates or acetates to give it a nice green sheen. It's believed that this toxicity for the fake green teas is what is responsible for the prevalence of black tea in the Western market. We already imported slightly more black tea than green, but here, as we come into the 17 to 1800s, green tea really falls out of the British cultural zeitgeist and kind of gives way to black tea entirely. It's why if you go to any cafe or restaurant here in basically the entire Western Hemisphere and the menu just says tea, I guarantee that is going to be a cup of black tea, be it Earl Grey, English breakfast, or the like. Now, how to combat this massive rise in black market tea trade? Simple. At least you think so. A whole host of different methods were introduced, legislation making it illegal to trade in adulterated tea that was largely ignored until a chap called Richard Twining was consulted by then Prime Minister William Pitt Younger. He suggested the reduction of those import taxes from 119 to a mere 12.5%, radically reducing any value in smuggling tea and forging tea, and so it made it accessible, affordable and safe through the introduction of the 1784 Commutation Act. But there you have it. That is how tea became kind of the everyman's drink of England, is how it became affordable and, more importantly, safe for consumption for the vast majority of people who wanted to enjoy this beautiful beverage. That wasn't the end of the troubles, though. Tea continued to be plagued by the black market, especially the production of smooch, for another couple of decades until incredibly strict food and drink laws stamped out that illicit trade altogether. Black tea is very much the prevalent form of tea here in the UK, as I've just mentioned, but there are in total 6 categories of tea, and all of them come from the same plant. That's right, there is only one species of tea plant. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. There are a whole host of different plants that we all call them teas. Our lovely caffeine-free infusions at the end of the day with chamomile, lavender, or our refreshing after-dinner infusions with things like lemongrass, peppermint, ginger, fennel, turmeric, all sorts. These are not, technically speaking, tea. They do not contain the tea plant itself. That is why they are largely caffeine-free. Now, of course, there are other caffeinated plants that you'll find around the world. There's things like mate, there's coffee, of course. But if you want to cut caffeine out of your tea entirely, you're not going to be drinking any of the actual tea plant. Even decaffeinated tea will still contain a small measure of caffeine, as it's fundamental to the plant's chemical structure and cannot be entirely removed. But the 2 main varietals of the tea plant, the Camellia sinensis, part of the Theaceae family, so it does produce beautiful little white flowers in October. Our 2 main varietals, the 2 big strains of the tea plant, are Camellia sinensis and Camellia sinensis assamica. So named for the regions in which they were discovered. The sinensis is just the Latin term meaning from China. So sinensis is the Chinese tea plant. It is a fairly small plant. I say small, it can reach heights of 10 to 15 feet, but compared to its cousin, as I'll mention in a minute, that's basically nothing. 10 to 15 feet tall, and the leaves are usually between 2 and 4 inches long. It likes high elevations, cooler climates, and fairly minimal rainfall. It produces lots of individual stems from the plant. It is a bush rather than anything else. The assamica, on the other hand, named for the Assam region of India, that has a solid trunk at the centre, and if left to grow wild, will happily reach heights of 50 to 60 feet tall. It is a tree rather than the shrub-like bush of its cousin. Its leaves are also significantly larger. We're looking at 8 to 10 inches, growing at much lower elevations, hotter climates, and they typically produce much stronger, maltier, more robust flavours because of this. It's why if you have an English breakfast every morning, or an Irish breakfast, or some other form of breakfast-style tea, it's a fairly good bet that Assamica tea will form the basis of that brew, of that blend, due to the intense flavours. They're typically grown closer to the equator in Assam, India, or in places in Africa, looking at Rwanda, Ethiopia, Kenya as well. South Africa in a few places, and even here in the UK, we have a few plantations for tea plants. A very small one is in my back garden. I have a few tea plants of my own. Not that I've managed to make any tea from them yet, they're still developing. When it comes to growing your tea plants, they typically grow either from the seeds that they produce once a year, or you can use vegetative propagation, where you take cuttings from the parent plant, plant those cuttings, and then grow a genetic copy of the donor generation, essentially a cloning technique. They'll grow in nurseries, or in my case indoors, for about 18 months before they're moved out into your garden or the gardens proper. There they will grow for anywhere up to 2 years or so to fully develop before you really want to start harvesting from them. Depending on where the garden is located, this takes longer or shorter due to hotter weather, different climate patterns, all sorts of various factors which then go on to influence the flavour of the tea itself. But from 2 varietals, we have hundreds upon thousands of what we call cultivars. These are cultivated varietals made by crossbreeding or generationally breeding or locationally breeding tea plants down through different generations until we get things that are incredibly unique to certain areas. For example, in the Nantou region of Taiwan, there are teas that are incredibly rich in a chemical called pectin. If anyone's come across milk oolong in their travels, this is that kind of tea. The pectin makes the liquor of the tea that they produce feel incredibly thick and rich on the tongue, that creamy sensation akin to the texture of milk. There is no milk in a milk oolong. I feel that's important to stress because the name can trip some people up. But yes, depending on where your tea is grown, its altitude, its temperature, its population density, these can all have effects on the tea as it develops, and they all lend themselves to surprisingly unique versions of this one singular plant species spread all over the world. There are some incredibly unusual ones. Philip mentioned the weird and wonderful parts of tea around the world. There are some really bizarre parts out there. Have you ever considered monkey plucked tea? Tea leaves harvested by monkeys. Harvesting is perhaps a very generous word for it. The story goes that the farmers in various regions of China discovered that if you were to toss sticks at the monkeys that lived on the hills, the monkeys would throw things back. And if they happened to be sitting next to a tea plant, they would rip sticks and stems off of the tea plant and throw them back. So harvesting is perhaps, as I say, a very generous word, but monkey plucked tea is absolutely one of the stranger parts of tea's history and culture. So, enough dawdling, the 6 categories of tea. We have black and green, which most people will be familiar with. Some people will probably have come across oolong teas before. These are what I jokingly refer to as the third tea, mainly because people know about black and green, and when they start doing their own research, oolong's usually the next thing that pops up. After oolongs, we have white teas. White teas are very, very delicate. They're very light. I'll explain more about those in just a moment. And then we have the 2 rarer forms of tea. This is our yellows and our pu'er, or our dark teas instead. Yellow is perhaps the rarest of the 6, not necessarily for the reasons you may suspect, but I can go more into that in just a moment. But we'll start with white tea, as it is the least processed of the 6 varieties. Depending on what kind of tea you want to produce, you may very well harvest different leaves from the tea plant. Typically, our highest quality pluck will comprise of 1 bud and 2 leaves on the stem of the plant, so we call it fine pluck. In the case of some white teas, however, we only harvest that 1 unopened bud, that as yet undeveloped leaf that sits at the very tip of the tea plant stem. When they are dried, the hairs on the outside of these buds turn a brilliant sterling silver colour, hence their affectionate name, silver needles, or yin-shen white teas. If you were to take a bud and a leaf, these would be called bai mudan, or peony white tea, so named for their more floral appearance. And below that, using none of the buds but only the open leaves, these are our shoumei white teas. Now, despite being the lowest quality, technically speaking, Xiaomei is absolutely my favorite, mainly because the other two have very elegant and distinguished names. We have the Silver Needles and the Peony White. Xiaomei translates very loosely as old man's eyebrows, which I think is absolutely brilliant. There is a surprisingly long running history of eyebrows being linked to tea. They keep popping up in various stories about tea's mythology and tea's history. So yes, that may not have been a connection you're expecting to learn about. Tea and eyebrows, a match made in heaven, apparently. Apologies for the noise. There we go. Just saying that can't. After white tea, which is plucked, withered and dried, this is all that happens to it, we come on to our yellow teas. The three first teas, white, yellow and green, are all what we would call non-oxidized. You know, when you slice an apple in half, it starts to go brown from the outside in. That is oxidization. It is the cellular breakdown after you have split the cells and its oxygen gets in and rips it apart on a molecular level. We don't want this to happen with our white, yellow or green teas. White tea avoids it by being treated very, very delicately, very, very gently, so that those cells aren't broken in the first place. With yellow and green, however, they are often rolled or shaped or twisted in some way, so they would begin to oxidize were we not to stop it. The easiest way to stop it is to make those leaves very, very hot, very, very quickly. This denatures the enzymes inside the plant's leaves and prevents them from breaking down. Basically locks the cells shut. It's why green tea stays green. This can be done in two ways. You can either pan fire your teas by tipping them into a heated metal wok or pan, or you can steam them by blasting them with superheated water vapor. This is what's commonly referred to as sencha tea. Sencha, steamed tea. I love Japanese teas for this reason. They're often very self-explanatory about what they are. Sencha, steamed tea. Matcha, crushed tea. Hojicha, roasted tea. Excellent, brilliant system. I love it. The yellow teas of China, though, are very, very rare because they aren't produced in very many places, and the methods used to produce them are very, very traditional. In some cases, these yellow teas date all the way back to Song Dynasty China, back when only the imperial family was allowed to use the color yellow. As a result, green teas, the highest quality of green teas that were presented to the imperial family, were called yellow tribute teas. As a result, different tea makers often competed to earn imperial favor by developing incredibly complex and elaborate means of production for these yellow teas. As a result, by the end of the Song Dynasty, yellow tea was something completely different, even on a chemical level. It's plucked, withered to remove any excess moisture. It will then be pan-fired, but then steamed, blasted with superheated water vapor, or just pan-fired a second time before being wrapped in a dense paper. This is sometimes called cow paper. No cows are actually involved, and it's left to sit and kind of marinate in the leaves' own chemicals. Essentially, it's left to ferment, in some cases for up to a month, 2 months at a time. As a result, this process is incredibly time-consuming and relies very heavily on the individual expertise of the tea makers in question. With the fall of imperial China, the prestige attached to these imperial yellow teas went away as well, and the gardens that used to make them could no longer afford to spend 3 to 4 months producing these incredibly artisanal, bespoke teas for the emperor. Now they had to produce simply much more economically viable green teas instead. To my knowledge, there are only 14 gardens split across all of China today that still produce traditional yellow tea, though there are gardens in other places who are trying to produce yellow style teas, trying to replicate those techniques and processes. Yellow, as I say then, is very closely related to green. Green and yellow I would call cousins in the tea world, and green is far more prevalent, mainly because it's much faster and can be much easier to produce. Green teas, as I say, are split into steamed and pan-fired. If you're going to steam the tea, it will not often be withered. There's no sense in removing moisture from the plant matter if they're going to be blasted with superheated water vapor. immediately afterwards. The theming of sencha green teas can be very quick or it can be very slow, and both of these have an effect on the flavour of the tea as it goes through the rest of the processing. People often think that matcha is an entirely separate category of tea. In fact, no, matcha is just a powdered green tea. It is designed and cultivated and harvested to become matcha, nothing else, but it is just a type of green tea that is first steamed, dried, and crushed into a very fine powder. In China, however, the vast majority of green teas are still produced through pan firing, this tipping of the leaves into a heated metal wok or pan, pressing them against the hot metal to denature the enzymes and lock the cells shut. The pans that are used to do this are usually around 270 degrees Celsius. I do not know what that is in Fahrenheit off the top of my head, but it is exceedingly hot. I have pan-fired teas for myself, and I still have the burn scars on my forearms where I accidentally let my arm touch the edge of the pan. I would not be making that mistake a second time. It is incredibly hot work. Once they've been pan-fired and the enzymes set, then they can be roasted dry to remove any residual moisture from the plant matter. This is about as simple as it gets when producing green teas. So, after the pan firing, it's important to note that the leaves aren't necessarily completely dry and rigid. You can still shape them. This is where we get these beautiful examples of things like jasmine pearls, where the leaves have been rolled into tight bundles of tea leaves that unfold slowly as you infuse them, or even things like jinshan moli, the blossoming teas, often a bright but tasteless flower, something like a marigold, wrapped in green tea leaves that when it sits in the hot water slowly blossoms over time, producing incredibly delicate flavours and an incredibly beautiful display all in one go. So yes, that is our 3 non-oxidized teas. From here on in, oxidization does take place, but it is very carefully controlled. This is where we get to oolong teas. These are partially oxidized, and if you have black tea at one end of the scale being fully oxidized and green tea at the other end of the scale being ideally not oxidized at all, oolongs can be anywhere in between. As a result, there is massive diversity within this one category. We call oolongs that are close to the black tea end of the spectrum dark oolongs. Examples would be things like Da Hong Pao, the big red robe, incredibly rich, intense, chocolatey, and in some cases quite mineral flavors, whereas the jade end of the spectrum, the close to the green end of our scale, these are generally much more vegetal, more floral, but they can have very roasted notes depending on how the leaves are treated. So for oolongs, we may actually pluck our leaves further down the stem. We're avoiding those top 3 and looking further down the stem for a more mature leaf. This is why, technically speaking, oolongs may contain slightly less caffeine, because caffeine is primarily produced in the younger leaves at the very top of the tea plant, a natural protective mechanism that the tea plant employs. As a result, it's mainly focused in the bud and those first 2 leaves, and oolongs using the lower leaves may have slightly less, but the whole topic of caffeine quantities in tea is incredibly knotty and complicated, and it's never as simple as black tea has more than green, green has more than white. Some people seem to believe that green tea contains no caffeine whatsoever. I will go on the record here and say categorically this is not true. Green tea contains caffeine, I promise you that. But oolongs, no matter whether they are jade or dark, they are partially oxidized, be that all the way to about 80% or even as little as 10 to 14%. The level of oxidization begins to turn the leaves brown. It breaks the cells down, and as the cells break, new compounds are formed as the chemicals mix and form new chemical compounds. The ones for tea that are most important are thiorubigen and theaflavin. Thiorubigen provides a light color but a stronger aroma. This is why a jade oolong will be very aromatic, but not too different in coloration to your greens or even yellow teas. Whereas dark oolongs, more fully oxidized, have started to produce theaflavin as well. This produces that much darker, richer, deeper amber color that we'd be more familiar with in our black teas, and provides that really rich, heady aroma that black tea often gives us. It's also where we get the production of tannins from. Tannins are that chemical that makes your mouth feel dry after you drink your tea or have a cup of red wine, for example. After we've gone past that dark oolong end of the spectrum, we reach black tea, probably the kind of tea that we've had the most experience with over the years, especially here in the West. And black tea is fully oxidized. We're here plucking the leaves, putting them through a very heavy withering process. The withering is just sitting the leaves into a warm area to extract moisture from them. And for most tea, that's about 30% of the moisture. For black teas, that can be as high as 60% or so. It's done in big withering troughs, big wooden troughs with a metal mesh on the bottom. Big fans are placed underneath the mesh to cycle warm air up through the leaves. And what may go into the trough as an 8-inch deep bed of leaves will shrink to only an inch deep after the withering is done. If you live in a very humid region, like the monsoon season in Darjeeling, India, that might take upwards of 12 hours to complete the full withering. It's a very long process in some cases. The leaves can then be rolled, pushed into a big tub or bin and rolled over a bumpy metal plate underneath. This bumping and pressing of the leaves breaks the cells inside, allowing the leaf to remain whole whilst the chemicals inside form theaflavin and theorubigen, creating those very rich, malty, astringent black teas. That's not to say they're all the same though. You can also get what we call CTC black tea, cut or crush, tear and curl. This is generally speaking what you'll find in tea bag products on supermarket shelves all over the world. It's that very, very fine tea powder, essentially dust or Fanning's grade tea leaves that is not necessarily poor quality tea, but will not be the highest quality of tea. They are designed to infuse very strongly, very quickly, and with a great deal of flavour, rather than to provide a look into the great breadth that tea can give you if you look across all the different categories of orthodox styles of tea, whole leaf styles of tea. The last category then is pu'er or dark tea. These are often aged and fermented teas, and they will fall roughly into two categories. We call them sheng and shoal pu'er. They both start the same way. Ancient tea trees from places in Yunnan, China will be harvested of their leaves and they'll be turned into mao cha, raw or unfinished tea. The tea leaves will be plucked, withered, pan-fired and rolled. They become a form of green tea, non-oxidized, technically speaking. But then, depending on whether we're making sheng pu'er or shoal pu'er, the method changes. If you want to make sheng pu'er, I have good news. All you have to do is be in the Pu'er Valley in Yunnan, China, and have about 30 years to spare, give or take. Sheng pu'er is aged for extended periods of time, in some cases over 100 years. This allows the leaves to ferment naturally and produces incredibly mellow but earthy liquors that are very, very pale, almost like a white tea. On the other hand, if you don't want to wait that long, you might try your hand at producing shoal pu'er, cooked or ripened pu'er tea. Here we take that matcha and we pile it up. We put a big thermal blanket over the top and crank up the temperature so that it begins to break down much, much faster, spraying it with enzymes taken from previous pu'er cultivations and making sure that the heat at the center of the pile is routinely circulated throughout the rest of the leaves as they basically begin to compost and break down. At the end of a 70 to 90 day period or so, you're left with a deep, dark pile of desiccated leaves, and these are the basis for shoal pu'er. They will then be steamed and pressed into solid discs, blocks or cakes in some cases as they're called, and these you can chip off small quantities to make your cup of tea from. They are incredibly deep and earthy and rich flavours. They're sometimes called the Marmite of teas. You either love them or you hate them. They can be quite polarising. I personally think they're absolutely fantastic, but that's because they let me use my favourite word in the English language, which is petrichor, the smell of earth after rain. And if you ever try a cup of shoal pu'er, you'll understand exactly what I mean. Unfortunately, I don't have a clock in front of me, so I don't know how long I've been waffling on at you guys about the wonderful world of tea. But if anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to field those now if there's still time.
Thank you so much, Liam. Do we have any questions?
How do you spell petrichor?
Petrichor.
Thank you for the question. Any additional questions? All right.
I think
His favorite tea?
what's your favorite tea?
My favorite tea. Okay. You've opened a whole treasure trove here. So my favorite category of tea is a green tea, and it is Longjing green tea, or Dragonwell green tea, to give it its translated name. This is the pan-fired tea. The Longjing leaves are tipped into the pan and they are pressed repeatedly against the metal until they are flattened like blades of grass. This repeated exposure to the hot metal gives them incredibly roasted or cooked quality, almost like chestnut or hazelnut. In some cases, people have called them kind of like popcorn flavor of tea, just due to how nutty and crisp they can become. Supposedly, the shape of those leaves, that pressed, flattened grass blade shape, was done as a tribute to the eyebrows of the emperor at the time. So there you go, eyebrows coming back into the story there. And I must say that eyebrows is a very interesting way to tribute someone. But yes, Longjing green tea from Hangzhou in Zhejiang province, China. Absolutely beautiful green tea. Brew it nice and low at around 185 Fahrenheit, around 85 Celsius, and enjoy an incredibly sweetened, crisp cup of green tea.
So could you name perhaps 2 more teas that aficionados such as you might enjoy when you have what you want?
2 other teas. I would go with something like Da Hong Pao, the big red robe. This is probably my favorite of the dark oolongs. It's incredibly black leaves, quite easy to mistake for a black tea if you don't know what you're looking at. But it has a very dense kind of mineral flavor. Some subsections of the category can be quite chocolatey as well. They're incredibly rich, and you can use the leaves over and over, especially if you're brewing gongfu style as opposed to using a teapot like the one that I've got
Spell
here.
that, please.
The guy one, or gongfu.
That one, tell us. Spell that. The name of the tea. Spoken.
So that would be DA space HONG space PAO.
All right, thank you very much for the questions. We've actually run out of time today. I just want to thank you so much, Liam, for being here today.
Can I ask one more quick one? Is there a way to get any? My head is spinning with all the information you provided. It's fascinating. Is there any written digital format to access this, or just have to hear you speak next time?
There's a whole wealth of information about tea out there. One of the books I would recommend to people who want to get started would be Jane Pettigrew's The New Tea Companion. It basically covers the stuff I've talked about in way more detail. There are a whole host of YouTube channels out there that will talk about the history of tea, the categories of tea. It's been around for 5,000 years. There is an absolute wealth of information.
Thank you, Liam.
Thank you, Liam.
I think a big round of applause.
I think. Do you think passion thrives through?
Oh, yes.
Have you ever in your life not one or or anything like that at all? Liam brings his A game, and that passion is just, it's boiling over. Liam, you've overcooked the tea. So
I do try not to oversteep it, but sometimes something gets the better of me.
you did brilliantly, and just wait until Liam gets into when you should produce your tea, how you should let the water sit for a period of time, the temperatures we should engage in. And there is, Liam and I have been very fortunate on the platform of USA Global TV and Radio. We have an incredible program on Liam and I actually entwining, going through a whole journey of the tea and the experience together on Live, Learn, Teach, Inspire. So Liam, as always, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you to everyone around the world who's been watching our show today. This concludes this exciting episode of The Power of Etiquette and Manners here on USA Global TV and Radio. Philip, we have one more event today, which is we are actually going to our afternoon tea. And then the London Experience for 2025 June has concluded. What would you like to share with people out there about this experience?
Well, all I can say that it's a privilege, it's a joy, as I mentioned earlier at the start of the show, to have people from all over the world showing interest in the journey of what we were founded on. And sometimes often people think this is all founded on pussyfooting around and yeses and nos and please and thank yous, but it's far deeper than that. And I'm always bowled over by the quality and the caliber of people, the person that walks through the door of our organization. And the one thing I can absolutely share, that when the door of the British School of Excellence opens, it remains open. It's there for you to knock on at any point in time. And we love supporting, guiding, and steering. And the London experience is just a little scratch and tip of the iceberg when it comes to immersement into the scenes behind the closed doors, so to speak, as one delegates Christine mentioned at the start of the show, to taking on a journey into ninth generation businesses, properties that we're stepping into from the 1700s that are still standing today and still producing under that roof. And it is just extraordinary. And over the years, we've built relationships, we have built friendships, and that is what life is about. It's just as Dr. JACALYN said, everything we do is about collaboration. It's about bringing people together, giving them the opportunity to really spread their wings and soar like an eagle. So from me here at the British School of Excellence in London, it's a privilege to have everyone in this room present. It really and truly is, even though you may not be able to see them right now, and to have really established such a great business relationship, but more so than that, a deep friendship with Dr. JACALYN. She's a pain sometimes, but she's cool.
Thank you, my friend. All right, before we go over to our sponsors, I just want to invite you to subscribe to our channel. You see it on the screen. There's actually a QR code. It's USA Global TV and Radio. Just put your device up to the QR code, scan it, and you will be a member of our community. We're going to now go over to our sponsors. We want to thank everyone for the follows, the likes, the subscribes. We really do appreciate it. We have over 60 shows that we are bringing to you, and also 60 show hosts from around the world. So we stand for world-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. And now we're going to go over to watch one of our beautiful sponsors, and it's actually Ring Thing. Let's take a look, and we will come back with you to another program. Bye for now. USA Global TV and Radio, home of the YouTube Silver Creator Award, proudly presents Just the Thing for Your Ring. Introducing the patented Ring Thing, your premium personal ring holder to keep your ring safe, nearby, and avoid loss.
The Ring Thing just got smarter. Add your logo and an NFC tag that opens to your website with one tap. Waterproof, inner padding, and now a forever business card.
Just the thing for your ring. Scan the QR code seen here to learn more about Ring Thing or place your order. Follow Ring Thing on Instagram at ring_thing_ or go to our website, ringthing.com.
From the magical world of the amazing adventures of Lady Ella comes a heartwarming new journey filled with kindness, courage, and compassion. Lady Ella, the beloved ladybug and listening mentor, is back, and this time she is not alone. Meet her brave and thoughtful brother, Lord Jack. Together, they take flight on their very first kindness adventure. Along the way, they meet 3 new friends in need: a duck feeling discouraged, a mouse struggling to be understood, and a busy little bee who's completely lost. But with the power of elevated listening and simple acts of kindness, Lady Ella and Lord Jack show us how understanding and empathy can make the biggest difference in someone's day. Written by Dr. JACALYN KERBECK, the listening mentor. This 9th book in the best-selling Lady Ella series teaches children ages 5 to 10 the essential skills of listening, kindness, and etiquette. Now available for pre-order on Amazon. Scan the QR code and order your copy today.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA-Global-TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dyes. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. JACALYN KERBECK. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.